Sister Marilyn Lacey, a sister in the Bay Area of San Francisco and a relative of Monsignor Lacey, the late Monsignor Lacey, former Vicar General of San Francisco. And her ministry was to welcome refugees and others like in their position into from the airport and get them settled, and then they would help them orient themselves. And so one day she tells the story of meeting this woman who came in exhausted, having traveled many, many thousands of miles and going through the whole process of coming into the country, a refugee. And she asked if she was hungry. She says, "Yes, I am." So they prepared her a meal. They went and got some things and put it down in front of her. But she didn't eat it. And Sister said, "I'm sorry, is the food okay?" "Oh," she said, "it looks wonderful. I'm very hungry." And Sister said, "Well, may I ask, why aren't you eating the food?" And she simply looked up at her sister and said, "But where are the others? Where are the others?" And Sister said, "What others?" And she replied, "Well, in my country, we would never ever eat alone. Eating is a communal activity. As a matter of fact, if you ate alone, it might be seen as a sign that you're hoarding and being selfish. But we always eat with each other, strangers, friends, family." I say this story because it speaks of communion. It speaks of unity. And this really is at the heart of the gospel and at the heart of that first reading, to love God with your whole heart and your neighbor as yourself. Now I know that we use Matthew 25 quite often to undergird our social teaching, and well, we should, because it's definitely a very important theme in that gospel. But really the primary focus of Jesus' telling of this gospel is union with Him. Jesus is saying that if you don't accept those whom I send, you don't accept me. It's one and the same. Jesus is uniting Himself with us. Just as it was Jesus who united love of God and love of neighbor. Those two laws were around for a long, long time. But it was Jesus who put them together and said you have to have both together. You cannot love God and not neighbor, or the other way around. And so it's fundamental then, this unity. This union with Christ demands union with our brothers and sisters, with all human beings. Now we know that there are some over the years who have said that religion is the opium of the masses. But actually, true religion, authentic religion, is perhaps our greatest challenge and offers our greatest reward. It's not a crutch. It's a demand to love God with our whole heart and our neighbor as ourselves. And so it is in this spirit then that Pope Francis has inaugurated the Share the Journey campaign, to live out this call of love of God and of each other. And again, this is the primary focus of these 2 years. We can get talking about lots of things regarding immigration in our country and throughout the world. And certainly we often talk about things like legality and these kinds of things. But the words of St. John Paul come to mind. An irregular legal status cannot allow the migrant to lose his or her dignity, since that migrant is endowed with inalienable rights that can neither be violated nor ignored. Yes, we must work for comprehensive immigration reform. We must do all that we can. But our first duty is to be one with Christ and one with our immigrant brothers and sisters. Jesus tells us that if we want to be one with Him, we have to be one with each other. This is seen in a variety of ways, this unity between Christ and ourselves. I'm fond of quoting Jean-Pierre de Caussade, in large measure because I often don't understand him, and I have the theory that if I keep quoting him, maybe someday it'll sink in. He's a beautiful author, 17th century spiritual author. But one of my favorite quotes, he says that faith sees that Jesus Christ lives in everything and works throughout history till the end of time. That every fraction of a second, every atom of matter contains a fragment of his hidden life and his secret activity. That's a wonderful quote. Every atom of matter, every fraction of a second, contains a fragment of Christ's hidden life and secret activity. How much more so then in our immigrant brothers and sisters? And furthermore, we're made in the very image and likeness of God. In the compendium of the social doctrine of the Church, we read that since something of the glory of God shines on the face of every person, the dignity of every person before God is the basis of the dignity of human beings before other human beings. This notion, then, that we all have equal dignity because we're made in the image and likeness of God is central to our teaching, our social teaching, and is central to our teaching on immigrants. All of us reflect the image of God. There's our unity with God, with Christ. And since we all reflect this image, we are one. It's the same image, each one of us. As a matter of fact, when we all come together, the image of God is most complete. And when we refuse to welcome the stranger in our midst, the image of God is marred and fragmented and incomplete. And a final connection is that Jesus joins us through the medium of suffering. He surrendered himself and became one of us, not deeming equality with God something to be grasped. That's suffering, letting go, surrendering. And he died on the cross for us that we might have eternal life. The Jesus that raises his hand in judgment at the end of time raises a hand with a nail hole in it to symbolize his unity with all humanity. Because all of us suffer, and Christ suffers with us. And so these are some of the ways that we're one with Christ and one with each other. And we know that the Church has a special place in her heart for the poor, sometimes called a preferential option for the poor. And that is, I believe, because the poor are the ones most in danger of not being united with us. They're the ones most in danger of dying of starvation, of disease, of being forgotten, of being trafficked and beaten down. It is the poor that we must reach out to first and gather in to be with us. And clearly, it's hard to imagine anyone who could be poorer than an immigrant, a refugee, with nowhere to lay their head, and quite often no laws to protect them. And sadly, in some places, no warm welcome. And so our Holy Father asks us to journey together with our fellow pilgrims for these 2 years and beyond, so that we might give witness and advocate and pray and learn, so that all of us together might be fellow pilgrims. I think the Pope actually, a while back, gave a beautiful context for these 2 years. Remember when he came to visit our country not long ago and spoke before the joint sessions of Congress. He said that we, the people of this continent, are not fearful of foreigners, because most of us were once foreigners. I say this to you as the son of immigrants, knowing that so many of you are also descended from immigrants. Let us remember the golden rule. Let us treat others with the same passion and compassion with which we wish to be treated. Let us seek for others the same possibilities which we seek for ourselves. Let us help others to grow as we would like to be helped ourselves. In a word, if we want security, let us give security. If we want life, let us give life. If we want opportunities, let us provide opportunities. We are one with Christ and one with each other. May the next 2 years help us to extend this unity to everyone as we ask over and over and over again, where are the others? God of our wandering ancestors, long have we known that your heart is with the refugee, that you were born into time in a family of refugees, fleeing violence in their homeland, who then gathered up their hungry child and fled into alien country. Their cry, your cry, resounds through all the ages, will you let me in? Give us hearts that break open when our sisters and brothers turn to us with that same cry. Then surely all these things will follow. Ears will no longer turn deaf to their voices. Eyes will see a moment for grace instead of a threat. Tongues will not be silenced, but will instead advocate. And hands will reach out, working for peace in their homeland, working for justice in the lands where they seek safe haven. Lord, protect all refugees, immigrants, asylum seekers in their travels. May they find a friend in us, and so make us worthy of the refuge we have found in you.